classroom. This has been an exciting project, very exciting. So obviously, you know, it takes place here at Foley, because that's where I teach here. And I also incorporated all of Madison County SSB teachers, or MSD teachers as what Georgetown would call it. And I was solely looking for different classroom management strategies that they have, that each teacher has.
Emma, please go to your mom's room.
I have done a literature review, and I've coded it out into themes. The first theme I found was evidence-based instruction, which is where you learn the least to most prompts, or the greatest, or the most to least prompts. You can also use constant time delay, which is different strategies that I feel like would be imperative that teachers learn how to teach the MSD students. My next theme was teachers' attitude and knowledge. Obviously, if you have a negative attitude, it's gonna be hard to handle an MSD student. And then classroom management, obviously we all have to have classroom management. To be effective, you have to have praise, encouragement, and positive reinforcement for all students to be successful. This was an action research project, and it was mixed method that analyzed both quantitative and qualitative data. I used a survey for my qualitative data, or quantitative data, I used a survey, and observations and interviews, that was the qualitative data. And the 3 instruments created my triangulation of it. That means that the evidence that I found was gonna be accurate and trustworthy. So it was exciting. I used 6 participants. 3 were the middle school here in Madison County and the high school. They signed a consent form for data collection, and the purpose of the consent form was for privacy and confidentiality. And they had to choose a number, 1 to 6, as a teacher identifier for their privacy. And all their resources that I have collected will be shredded or deleted from my computer on January 1st, 2020. So, this was just talking about how I collected the data and analyzed it, talking about the triangulation of it all. I did analyze the graph, the Likert scale, the survey from a bar graph, and I took what common themes that they had, like if they all chose 1 being rarely or never to 5 being very often. So I took the 4 and 5 and I averaged them out and used that as my themes for the survey. So that's how I made for my survey. For the observation and interviews, I coded each one out individually and to find their common themes, which I will show you here in just a second. And then I take all 3 of them together and I find the common themes through all of them. And that's how it's triangulated, and that's how you get your final conclusions and knowing what the next steps are. So based on the analysis and the process of the triangulation, here's the survey results that I have. It was very, very interesting process for this. The common themes, the meta themes that I found was positive reinforcement, redirecting of student behavior, strategies of motivation, and evidence-based instruction. Those were all the meta themes for this whole presentation. And this is my stages of coding, so this is all my themes that I had together, what they all had in common for my survey, observations, and interviews. It was a timely process, but it was educational, where I did learn how the MSD classroom rolls. This is my second stage, where now I'm shortening my themes so then I don't have to have a lot of themes for my presentation. And this is where I found my final themes, which which is the meta themes. And the positive reinforcement is teachers need to use positive reinforcement in the classroom to teach children to make good choices. It does boost what students need to make the good choices that are meant to be made in the classroom. And then redirecting of student behavior. Teachers should redirect student behavior in the classroom because it enables the teacher with the control to keep the students safe. And with redirecting, you want to keep your body language neutral and your tone neutral, so that way they're not going to get excited on you and start arguing or yelling at you. Strategies of motivation. Obviously, we want to motivate our students to be successful in the classroom, and that's imperative that we need to do. And evidence-based instruction, obviously, that's a stage that I need to learn as well, and that's why I incorporated it in this, because this is what I want to learn more about for the future. For my conclusions, I based the analysis and triangulation on both quantitative and qualitative data. The researcher arrived at the conclusion that the research question could not be answered to its entirety. The four instruments did reveal some noteworthy assertions regarding middle school teachers' knowledge and use of classroom management strategies for effective classroom behaviors in the MSD classroom. And then I retouched on the positive reinforcement, redirecting of student behavior, student motivation, and evidence-based instruction. And then it just goes into what I did. I found some literature that goes along with my new themes that did help out. This was very interesting because I used a lot of the Council for Exceptional Children. I used a lot of their books, and it was a very good process to find that. For the redirect, what stuck out to me the most with this, the research that I found, was you don't want to pay attention to the most negative behavior in the classroom. You want to focus on the positive, because if you quit focusing on this kid that keeps blurting out and causing a big scene, if you pay, oh, I like how you're just sitting there, and you give them a piece of candy, then you're not paying attention to this kid. So therefore, he's gonna start thinking, well, if I start acting good, then I'll get what I want. I'll get a piece of candy. So you wanna focus on the positive behavior, not the negative. And that will help to redirect all the student behaviors. Although my question could not be fully answered to its entirety, I did come up with things that I could recommend for anybody who teaches MSD, is that you definitely need the evidence-based instruction, because it does help to engage your students so they can understand what you're teaching. The next one I recommend would be, it's apparent that MSD teachers need to find appropriate ways of redirecting student behavior by finding what the students are interested in. And that's hard because you have a lot of nonverbal kids, and that's important to find what they're interested in, so that way you can actually work with them. The third one is student motivation. This is where I think, we could take additional training on any of these sorts to become better at it. And we need to find new strategies of motivation. And the last but not least, teachers reported that we should use positive reinforcement in the classroom. It's important to encourage and to teach appropriate behaviors in the classroom to reinforce those. Future studies should revisit this research question so they can fully get an answer for the evidence-based instruction, definitely. More resources to find that actually work in the MSD field, because regular ed and MSD world are two completely different things. I've taught elementary for 9 years, and now I'm in the MSD role, and it's a brand new world, and I'm like, wow, this is so different, but it's still the same. do the same things that I did in regular ed. So I've had to learn some new strategies, and this has been helpful. So here is my references for all of the research that I have found. It has been a great experience. And does anyone have any questions?